Hey everybody, thanks for joining me again. Right now I'm on a trail up a mountainside. I'm about 3/4 of the way there, and the destination is an ancient church site. And I can't remember exactly from when the church is, but I want to say it's the 6th or 7th century, so it's pretty old. Behind me, just on the horizon there, you can see the Black Sea. So I'm in Samegrelo, Western Georgia, and today I wanted to talk about balance in life in the sense of something that I'm learning as I live in the village here is to kind of find balance for yourself. You need a footprint, both geographically and socially. And if you're missing one of those, you can kind of start to feel imbalanced, either with anxiety or stress or discontent. And so it's one of those little insights about life here that I wanted to share and maybe open up a little more deeply. And this will be a little break from the last video because I had planned on talking a little bit more about identity, but I think this actually dovetails with that topic. I'm going to talk about identity in another video as far as symbolic structure. So something that's kind of more immutable about the definition of identity. And then, give some more specific examples of that. But this topic of balance, I think will kind of tie into that, but it's a little bit of a detour for now. And then all of this kind of culminates in the larger topic that I want to talk about, which is culture, which has a symbolic element to it, as well as kind of a subjective manifestation relative to each individual culture. So those are going to be kind of future videos. And then of course I'll just keep sharing life here, different ideas also about symbolism and some symbolic structures that I've already written about on my Substack. So anyway, I should probably catch my breath, enjoy the view behind me, and I'll continue this when I'm at the old church. It's a beautiful day. Lush. See a steep slope there. This section's pretty steep. It's probably hard to tell in the video how steep it is. And obviously I'm not wearing a shirt. That's kind of habit for me. Didn't necessarily want to do a shirtless video, but too bad. It's nice and cool out here. And who wants a shirt on? So here we are at the highest point on this small range at Geographical. It's an ancient church. This is a small building next to the church for services because twice a year there are church services up here for St. George's Day. And it looks like this cross is newly installed because it was the Saturday of the cross on the Georgian Orthodox Church calendar. And somebody had put this here to commemorate the day. So it's a small church, as you can see, atop this beautiful hill. There's a better view that maybe I'll get to show you if we have time. Okay, so this is Geographical, as we saw in the lead up here. And what I wanted to talk about, since I'm here basically at the summit of my little hike, is this idea of balance in life. And part of the reason that this came up is because it's something that I've realized lately while I'm living here in a small village, and something that I didn't quite appreciate when I still lived back home in the US. But also this idea of balance ties into the concepts of identity that I want to talk about more in future videos. And one of the aspects of identity that I want to touch on now to help kind of frame balance is this idea that all identity has a center and a margin, or a center and an edge. right? The edge is the place at which the identity fades into the non-identity, into something else, right? So the boundary, the border of the identity. The heart is the center. And then in between the heart and the edge is the mass, right? The majority of the content that makes up the identity. So this gets abstract and complicated because the way I define identity applies to anything and everything that is on the spectrum of concrete to abstract, big, small, whatever. It's a fractal pattern, so it applies everywhere at all scales. And it can be found within identities as well. So we'll get to that in a future video. But if we just take this kind of slice of the definition of identity with the center and edge, life has this same structure. And to make it simple, if we think of the home as kind of the center where your life kind of gravitates around, and where the majority of your time typically is spent at home, that's kind of your center of gravity. And then as you go about your day, maybe you don't even leave your house, because so this idea can apply to within the home as well, right? It's the place where you spend the most time, where you're most anchored. And so this is part of the fractal nature of the pattern. This pattern exists within the house, but also outside the house, etc. So if you spend most of your time at home, but then you spend a little bit of time, say, out in your yard, or you spend even less time, say, further out into the town, you go grocery shopping, you go to some event or whatever, you're marking out a pattern in the structure of your life where the home is kind of the locus, the center point of the most important activities. And then as you kind of fade into the mass of this geographic space that you occupy, there's less of you outside, but there's more space and there's more content within that space. There's more of stuff in that radius that you are going out into the world. So one thing to keep in mind with this understanding is that this definition of identity is with respect to yourself. So it's the first person perspective of how you live, right? So in a normal course of, let's say, a month or a year, you go so far away from home so many times, but you mark out this kind of geographic pattern of the extent to which you have an imprint in the world, right? And then of course most of that time is going to be at home. So that can happen geographically, but it can also happen socially. So there are people who may live with you in your home, and these people kind of orbit within the around the core of your life at home, right? So they're closer to you in proximity, but they're also closer to you in relationship. As you go out, maybe you have friends over, they come to your house, that's part of the proximity thing. But you're gonna encounter people, neighbors, strangers on the street. And as you go further away from home, maybe you see people that you will never see again, or you only see, once in a blue moon, right? So there's also this kind of radius of familiar to unfamiliar as you expand outward away from the center of your home, the center of your life. So this is true spatially, it's also true relationally. So because this is just the natural pattern of life on the level of this kind of slice of our definition of identity, to be an integrated person, to have a balanced identity, you need to have both this kind of geographic and social life balanced between that which orients and orbits around home and that which constitutes the edge or the boundary of your imprint in the world, beyond which is the unknown, beyond which is people you will never meet, beyond which is places you'll never go, beyond which is things you'll never do or see or whatever, right? So we've kind of defined an orbit socially and geographically for your life, and to be balanced you have to have both. So for many people, and this is what I realized about myself, back in the States, I had a pretty broad footprint geographically. I would go out, do errands. I had a business. I'd be out kind of places, driving, doing errands, things like that. And so I was out and about. But home, when I came home, I lived alone, but also the neighbors in my neighborhood never really got together, never really talked to each other except maybe in passing. And that was about as close as anybody got in that home environment, in that immediate sphere, at least around my home, right? And then if you went out a little past that, like there was nothing, there was no contact, there was no relationship with anybody until maybe I got to, like, say, church, or maybe I went to another family member's house. But there was this massive gap between the people who I saw maybe once a week or once every couple weeks or whatever, versus the people that I hypothetically could see every day, but who were in their homes, right, and not really interacting with each other. And so a kind of social isolation forms out of that incomplete social radius, where there's not really a continuum anymore from the people that you would normally be close to orbiting around your daily life at home, and then in fading regularity the further out you got, right? Because there was no regularity. As you stepped outside your door, there was no relationship with anybody, no relationship with neighbors, except for maybe the friends that you had in these one or two places you would visit frequently or infrequently, and then maybe the occasional guest who came to your house, in my case to my house, right? So even though I had a pretty extensive and established geographic route, and I would walk in the neighborhoods, I would get out and stuff, the social landscape was very limited, and I could feel that my life was just not balanced. Like, it was not satisfying at all. It was very isolating. So I think this is what isolating is, as kind of a definition. It's an imbalance in this social and geographic radius on this plane of identity from home or center to margin, which is unfamiliar. That might all kind of seem like a jumble. We'll kind of sort these things out a little more crisply in future videos when I talk about more of the layers of this definition of identity, and kind of how it all gains dimension as we flesh it out. But living in the village here, this is kind of what I wanted to share. There is daily interaction with people, because people are just kind of out more in the village. The village I live in the Republic of Georgia here, is not a wealthy village. There are not many good jobs. People are generally poor, not in the same sense you might think of as in America, but they're not well off. But they are interacting with their neighbors on a day-to-day basis. People are visiting, sitting with each other, going from house to house. There's activity. And then in addition to that, obviously they're getting out to do their jobs. A lot of people have farms or orchards, and they're going to the market or something like that. And as I am living here and participating in this life, I'm finding that the gaps that I had in life back home, especially socially, are getting filled in a way that's satisfying a need that I didn't quite understand that I had. And so there's something about the need for connection and interaction that starts in the home, or if you live alone, certainly with your neighbors, that radiates outward, which is deeply necessary and balancing for life. The other piece of this is living in the village. There's not really a huge radius that I've had, because I live on a kind of a shoestring budget. Really most of my life here is centered on the social aspect, so it's almost flipped from what it was when I was back in the US. And so my social life is actually very balanced and let's say robust. I have a church that I go to with other people in the village, kind of like how it used to be in the olden days. You don't have to drive, several miles to do your daily worship or your weekly worship stuff. And I don't have to drive anyway. I can walk there. And most of my needs, they're in walking distance. I can go to the little store. I can meet people along the way, talk to them and stuff. but I didn't have like a very extensive geographic radius. And I found that for me, I need that. I'm kind of a traveler. I'm an adventurer type. And so I like to see new things. I like to see things from a different angle and see what's out there, see what's in my environment. So in about the last month, I've discovered this place here, Jageta, which is just a walk out of my house. And there's something beautifully symbolic about coming to this place because the entire road is uphill. It takes about an hour to hike up here, and I walk fast. So for the average person, it might take 2 days. No, it takes longer, but I walk fast, and it's a bit of a ways up here. And then you come to the highest point. When you're down in the valley, you can see this whole stretch of mountain that rises up out of this big valley. And as I speak into the camera, looking west, it's just flat. And then the Black Sea is on the horizon there. And then if you go on the other side, which there's actually a ridge here where you can see the other side, it's a very similar kind of flatness. So it's like this huge swell rises up in the middle of this valley. And actually, if you go north, there are giant mountains, which is where Swaneti is in the Greater Caucasus Range. But this kind of local mountain here gives me a chance to get away. And then the far range of this kind of radius of life in the village is, shall we say, recapitulated, or maybe that's not the right word, but it marks a boundary at which the pinnacle or the peak is an old church, right? So it's symbolic of the ascent to heaven. It's symbolic of deep past, because this is an ancient church. Like I said, I believe it's from the 7th century. So after discovering this church, I've been up here several times now, and I've explored here and there, and I have a lot more exploring to do. But it's a quiet place. It's a place of solitude. It's a place that I can come think and pray. And there's something about this balance that I've found living in this simple village on a shoestring budget that has brought a lot of perspective to my life back in the US. And basically what I can say is that we need both. We need this social layer, this social geography, and we need this physical geography to mark out the layer of identity that goes from center to edge. And at the edge, it shouldn't necessarily always be, let's say, the unknown or the infrequent. It should maybe be a special place that you infrequently go to, that is at kind of the pinnacle of the journey away from home, which marks a place of worship, a place of communion, a place of retreat, that then gives you perspective as you go, literally, in my case, down the mountain back to home, where the normal daily affairs of life occur. So there's a lot there to unpack as far as symbolism, and we'll definitely do that more as we go forward. But the little kind of sketch that I've laid out here is basically pilgrimage. So balance in life comes with neighbors, friends, family, neighbors at the core, which is the most frequent, let's say, center of life socially. And then you need, interaction with strangers and other people. And then you also need this kind of geographic layer that is marked out with distance. Not everybody has a mountain, so you can't climb a mountain. But tying those together, I think, is this notion of destination, geographic destination, that also ties into social and spiritual destination, which provides kind of a bond between both layers. So I'm kind of working this out symbolically. I don't quite know how to articulate it yet, but there's something there, and maybe you can unpack it. Maybe you can share your thoughts if you want, even in the comments as well. And we'll kind of keep developing these ideas, because there's definitely something here as far as what I've laid out and what I've experienced here that I'm trying to share. And hopefully we can all gain some good insights from this little experience here. So anyway, if you could like, share, subscribe. I hate that line, but I have to do it because I have a new channel. I'm trying to grow it. I'm trying to spread these ideas of symbolism and also just sharing my life in Georgia. So if you can do that, I greatly appreciate it, and we'll catch you on the next one. Nachvam dies. Here's the view from the top of the ridge line, which you can keep following to the southeast. It's a little bit overcast today. You can't see as far, but those are basically the foothills of the Greater Caucasus Range. And it's getting towards sunset. We're probably about an hour away, but it's about an hour back home, so I'll have to get going here pretty soon.